Napoleon Hill says that the subconscious is connected to infinite intelligence through the programming of the subconscious through repeated affirmation, which, to honor the guest, is like congruent affirmation, not fantasy affirmation, right? But let's say I've got a congruent, goal-orientated affirmation and a vision for my life. There is a part where it's like I can have an impact on my psychology by repeating it. Like you're a fan of affirmations, it's part of your manifestation formula. Which part of the brain is discarding invalid computations, let's call it? And how can a business owner be prudent in the application of concepts like affirmation or meditation in programming their mind or programming their life?
Well, first of all, the word affirmation has been diluted by self-help movement, and particularly the New Age movement, where it is assumed to be a positive statement that is counter to a negation. But the word affirmation originates from a condition of firmness in one's mind. It's not a positive statement. It's a condition of firmness in one's mind. And the only place you have something firm in one's mind that's unwavering is when it's non-emotional and it is centered on an authentic objective that's truly inspired and meaningful. We have polarized emotions, which I call joy, sorrow, happy, sad, like, dislike, admiration, despise, elation, depression, these polarities. And then we have synthesized feelings, which is grace, where we're poised, which is true gratitude, in other words, true feelings of love, inspiration, entheos, the God within, which is really not an excitement, but it's actually poised presence, certainty and presence. Those are the 6 synthesized feelings that are signs of congruency that spontaneously occur in the mind when you set a goal that is objective. Objectivity means even-mindedness, balanced, not subjectively biased. So anytime we set a goal like that, our executive center comes online, which is involved in inspired vision, strategic planning, executing plans, and self-governance. So the second we set a congruent goal, we see a vision of it, we have an internal dialogue that is a true affirmation, we see a strategy on how we can do it in our mind's eye, we have a desire to want to take action on it, and we don't get distracted by the amygdala, we have self-governance. That area of the brain, the forebrain, the medial prefrontal cortex, sends signals down into the amygdala to calm and mitigate the volatilities of the amygdala. And so we're no longer looking for immediate gratification with compulsions and no longer trying to avoid pain and risks. And we're now having a goal that understands the risks, already knows what contingency plans to take on it, already can see it in their mind's eye and wants to execute. That part of the brain, the executive center, when it's online, you're lucid, you're inspired, you're grateful, you love what you're doing, you feel certain about it, you're present, you're not thinking fantasies of the future and fears of the past and guilts of the past. And so that area of the brain, the frontal cortex, is lit up. And your visual cortex is lit up. And the internal fusiform area and the area of the brain that's involved in audio, which is the temporal lobes, they all light up. But when you're setting a goal that's actually a fantasy, not a goal, but you have something that's got pleasures without pains, positives without negatives, supports without challenges, your bullshit meter has to go on to balance it. And it comes up with a response. And it goes into more primitive parts of the brain and fires off a beta firing in the brain that's cacophony. It's all disjointed. There's no phase locking in the brain. It's all disjointed. And it's letting you know that your self-doubt, your fear, your bullshit meter, all that goes off to let you know that you're not setting a real goal that's really congruent. You're setting up a fantasy in an imagination as a compensation for some fear of the past. And that's when you get the noise in the brain. And it's firing all over the place without any coherency, without any phase locking, without any focus. So if you have to ask the question whether a goal is a goal, it's not a goal. You don't ask the question. When you know it's truly congruent, there's a confirmation of certainty and presence, and you see it in your mind's eye, and you feel it's impossible for you not to fulfill it because it's already done right now in front of you. You see it, and then you act. And people that have that clarity, people wonder, how do they have such certainty? because they're present already and they've already seen the outcome. They already know what strategy, and they just take action.
And then your team has to cope with it.
Well, the thing is it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic to expect a team of people to do that if the leader's not doing that. And
my job.
And they have to know the distinction between impulse and mania. If you can't say the downsides of a goal, you don't really have a goal. I learned that. I was coming down, you probably heard the story, but I was coming down the elevator in Trump Tower in New York City. And Donald lived above us. We lived on the 62nd floor at the time. And he was in the elevator, and we got on, my wife and I. And we came down the elevator, and we rode down with him. And we had a little conversation. We got off down at the bottom, and we went into the lobby area, and there were a dozen people waiting for Donald. And we were then going through the swivel door to go out onto 56th Street to go to the corner of Fifth Avenue. And we were going to go across straight, and he was going to go towards the Plaza Hotel. And we listened to the conversation that Donald was having with his team of disciples, you might say. And one of the things, he was doing the Hudson River Project at the time, which is a series of 30 to 70-story buildings over the Hudson River. And this was a major project because they really took some really dilapidated areas of town and they refurbished them and made something amazing out of it. And these people that he had with him were responsible for finding every problem that could occur in the project. So one was responsible for looking into the land, going down at least 12 to 15 stories, and make sure that we're not going to run into Indian burial grounds. Make sure there's not going to be gas down there. Make sure there's not going to be some geological phenomenon that's going to take us longer to get the foundation ready. And he said, I want to know every single thing that can go wrong with our project. I want you to come up with contingency plans on how to prepare for it if it occurs. And I want you to be able to make sure that those things are done within this budget. And he wasn't this positive thinking fantasy person. He was a methodical, strategic, mitigator of risk person. And he had each of those people do that. So they had a strategic plan to build those buildings. That can't be just by fantasy and chance. That's by thinking of every pro and con, holding the vision, knowing they're there, not living in a delusion, and preparing for those. And preparation meets opportunity. And the individuals that do that, they're the ones that I find achieve extraordinary results. And the people that just ad hoc things, sometimes they get it. They're more speculative. They're more impulsive. Sometimes they pull things off, but consistently, just like in investing, those speculators don't do as well. Jesse Livermore was probably the most noted speculator of history and became 3 times the wealthiest man in the world and 3 times the poorest man, and then eventually committed suicide. Where the people that had methodical, strategic things, more like a Warren Buffett, is the one that ends up having the long-term economic fulfillment and leaves a legacy.